One day it could all have ended. The Persian Empire was marching west. The greatest army the world had ever seen was moving towards small Greek cities that constantly hated one another. And in that very moment, the future of all of Western civilization was being decided. But let's start from the beginning. Because to understand why that moment carried such weight, you first need to understand what was at risk of disappearing. Imagine a potter in Corinth. Dawn. He's finishing a vase, painting it with a battle scene where heroes loom larger than the gods. He doesn't know that this vase will be found on the seafloor 2,000 years later. He doesn't know it will stand in a museum beside the gold of Egyptian pharaohs. He's simply doing his work, because beauty is worth the effort. This is ancient Greece. Ideas were born here that still live in our laws, our art, and the very way we think. And if you want to understand the world you live in, this journey is essential. Now, one step forward, into the age of the Hellenes, the land that shaped a people. Everything begins with the land, because the land always shapes a people before the people begin to shape themselves. Greece is a country of mountains and sea, sun and wind, where nature never let a person grow complacent, but always gave them inspiration. The Balkan Peninsula, covered in mountain ranges, its coastlines carved into countless bays and coves. All around, islands, Crete, Samos, Lesbos, the Cyclades, each like a separate universe. And everywhere, the sea. Always the sea. Mountains divided the valleys from one another, which is why no single great state arose here, ruled by one king. Instead, polis were born, city-states, each with its own character, its own patron gods, its own laws, and its own pride. The sea connected where the land divided. Greeks carried wine, olive oil, painted pottery, and returned with grain, metals, ideas. Because ideas always travel alongside goods, the climate was harsh, summers hot and dry, the soil rocky. But Greeks found a way, olive groves and vineyards, trees that grow where grain crops die. Olive oil became the gold of Hellas. And this struggle with difficult land was etched into the character of the people, not submission, but perseverance, not resignation, but the search for a way through. The civilizations that came before. But before the Greece we know had risen, others had already lived on this land. And their story is no less remarkable. The island of Crete, the largest island in the Aegean Sea. More than 4,000 years ago, the Minoan civilization flourished here, named after the legendary king Minos. Imagine the palace at Knossos, not merely a building, an entire city under one roof. Hundreds of rooms, corridors, staircases, storerooms, workshops, and plumbing. Clay pipes carrying fresh water into bathrooms, 14 centuries before the Common Era. And here is what is strange. We know what their bathrooms looked like, but we don't know a single one of their words. The Minoans had their own script, Linear A. We still cannot read it. An entire civilization that spoke to us through clay, and we still cannot hear the words. On the walls of the Knossos Palace, frescoes of dolphins, scenes of bull leaping, women in elaborate gowns. A vivid, joyful, colorful culture, not grim and warlike, but full of movement and beauty. And then, catastrophe. On the neighboring island of Thera, one of the most powerful volcanic eruptions in human history occurred. Tsunamis, ash that blotted out the sun. The Minoan civilization fell. The mystery of how it happened so quickly and so completely remains open to this day. From the mainland came the Achaeans. Mycenae, a city on a hill, surrounded by walls of stone blocks so massive that later Greeks believed only giant cyclopes could have lifted them. The Lion Gate still stands. Mycenaean kings controlled warehouses of grain and weapons, traded from Egypt to Sicily. And then, suddenly, at the turn of the 12th and 11th centuries BCE, everything collapsed. Droughts, internal conflict, mysterious sea peoples, and the palaces burned one by one. 300 years of silence, the Dark Ages. But something remained. Memory, legends, images of great kings and heroes passed down in song from generation to generation. It was from this memory that Homer would emerge, and with him a new Greece. The polis, a new form of human life. When the darkness lifted, Greece emerged entirely transformed. No kingdoms, no palaces. Instead, the polis, the city-state, a new form of human community that had no parallel in the ancient world. The agora, the public square where merchants and philosophers met. The Acropolis, the sacred hill with its temple. The theatre, where a community contemplated itself. The stadium, where the body competed alongside the spirit. The word politics, incidentally, comes directly from polis. Every polis had its own character, its own soul. Athens, city of Athena, goddess of wisdom. City of philosophers, orators, artists. Democracy was born here. The principle that power comes from the people, not from gods or kings. A revolution in human history, Sparta. Stop. Imagine being taken from your parents at the age of 7. Permanently. That is what it meant to be born in Sparta. A city of warriors where the state transformed children into soldiers from birth. Where boys were sent to barracks and trained to endure pain, hunger, and cold. Where women had more freedom than anywhere else in Greece, because Spartans believed the mother of warriors must be strong, harsh, disciplined, magnificent in its own way, and at the same time, terrifying. Corinth, a trade hub controlling 2 seas simultaneously. Thebes, a city that produced the sacred band, 150 pairs of warriors who fought together and never retreated. Miletus, the cradle of Greek philosophy, all different, but all Greek. A shared language, shared gods, shared identity, and constant rivalry among themselves. This tension between unity and competition gave birth to the Greek miracle. The gods and the art of perfection. Imagine Olympus, the highest mountain in Greece, shrouded in clouds, inaccessible and magnificent. The ancient Greeks looked at it and knew. The gods live there, not somewhere in the infinite reaches of the universe, but right here, beyond the clouds. Greek religion is not a religion of submission. It is a religion of relationship. Between human and God, there was a contract. You honor, the god protects. But the gods could also betray, could be unjust. And a person could argue with fate, though they did not always prevail. The 12 Olympian gods are 12 facets of human nature, elevated onto a pedestal. Zeus, the commanding father, unpredictable and all-powerful. Athena, cold wisdom and strategic intellect. Ares, the blind fury of battle. Aphrodite, beauty that destroys the mind. Apollo, light, harmony, art. Dionysus, chaos, ecstasy, the boundary between human and animal. When a Greek built a temple, he sought a form that reflected perfection. The Parthenon on the Athenian Acropolis has not a single straight line. Every column tilts slightly inward. The floor curves gently. All of this so the human eye perceives perfect verticality where physically none exists. This is not construction. It is optical illusion in the service of beauty. Greek art was a pursuit of the ideal. Sculptors studied the proportions of the human body not to reflect reality, but to reflect what it ought to be. Myron's Discobolus is frozen in the moment between motion and stillness. The Venus de Milo remains a standard of beauty to this day, though we don't even know her creator's name. And theatre. In 5th century Athens, Aeschylus, Sophocles, Euripides wrote tragedies that explored the darkest corners of the human soul. King Oedipus, who killed his father and married his mother without knowing it. Antigone, who chooses between the law of the state and the law of conscience. These plays did not entertain, they purified. Catharsis, the word Aristotle gave to that feeling. And then Thales of Miletus asked the question that changed everything. What is the world made of? Not who created it, but what is it made of? That question replaced myth with inquiry. Heraclitus, Pythagoras, Anaximander each gave their own answer, and each answer gave birth to a new question. And then Socrates, a man who wrote not a single line, who simply walked the streets of Athens and shattered the illusions of people who thought they had the answers. The Athenians sentenced him to death. He drank a cup of hemlock and died calmly, continuing the conversation until his last breath. His student Plato recorded those conversations. Plato's student Aristotle systematized all the knowledge of the ancient world. This thread is one of the most important in the intellectual history of humanity. The Persian Wars, when everything hung in the balance, and then from the east came a shadow. And all of it, the theatre, the philosophy, the marble, and the questions, was threatened with permanent erasure. The Persian Empire, the largest state the world had yet seen, moved westward. Marathon, 490 BCE, the Athenian army, fewer than 10,000 warriors, meets the Persians on the plain. The Strategos Miltiades attacks first and attacks at a run. The phalanx of hoplites charges the enemy with such speed that the Persian archers cannot take aim. The Persians are routed. A small people stopped a great empire, but Persia returned. Xerxes ferried his army across the Hellespont on a pontoon bridge, millions of men and horses crossing from Asia into Europe. Thermopylae, 300 Spartans under King Leonidas stand as a barrier. For 3 days they hold the narrow mountain pass, until a traitor shows the Persians a path around. Surrounded, they stay to die, all 300, to the last man. Their epitaph reads, "Go, tell the Lacedaemonians passer-by, that here, obedient to their laws, we lie." Salamis. The Greek fleet lures the Persian navy into a narrow strait. The Persians have 3 times as many ships, but in confined waters, numbers don't matter. The Greek triremes destroy the Persian fleet. Xerxes watches the battle from a golden throne on the shore and retreats. If Persia had won, Athens would have vanished, democracy would have vanished, the conditions in which Greek thought flourished would have vanished. The entire subsequent development of the West could have taken a completely different path. The tragedy of self-destruction. But victory over a common enemy did not make Greece unified. The contradictions between Athens and Sparta grew over decades. In 431 BCE, the Peloponnesian War began, 27 years of fratricidal conflict. During the siege of Athens, plague broke out. A third of the population perished. Athens suffered a crushing defeat in the Sicilian expedition. Ultimately, Sparta prevailed, but it was a hollow victory. Both sides were exhausted to their core. This is a tragedy in the full ancient Greek sense of the word. The people who together stopped Persia destroyed themselves with their own hands. The people who inscribed "Know thyself" on the temple at Delphi could not know their own destructiveness. Alexander and the Hellenistic world from the north arose a new power. Macedonia, King Philip II created an invincible army and subdued the Greek polis one by one. And then Alexander, Babylon, 32 years old. Fever or poison? No one knows. But this much is known with certainty. In the 12 years between becoming king at 20 and dying at 32, Alexander of Macedon changed the map of the world forever. Egypt fell, Persia fell, the very Persia that had once threatened to burn Greece. Babylon, Persepolis, Samarkand fell. Alexander reached India and turned back only because his army refused to go further. He founded cities. Alexandria in Egypt became one of the greatest cultural centers of the ancient world. He dreamed of merging East and West into one great civilization. The greatest empire the world had ever seen outlived its creator by exactly one breath. But the Hellenistic world, the world after Alexander, lived on for another 300 years. The Greek language became the language of education from Egypt to India. The Library of Alexandria gathered the knowledge of the entire known world. This was no longer the Greece of the polis, but it was the Greek spirit, flowing out across the entire ancient world. The legacy that never died, and then came Rome. It conquered Greece and found itself conquered by it. The Roman poet Horace wrote, "Greece, once defeated, defeated its conqueror." Rome took Greek gods, Greek architecture, Greek philosophy. Through Rome, the inheritance passed to medieval Europe. Through Byzantium, to the Slavic world. Through Arab translators, it was preserved and returned in the age of the Renaissance. And the earth still holds its secrets. From the waters off the island of Antikythera, fragments of an ancient shipwreck were raised. Among them, a mechanism of gears and dials. The Antikythera mechanism, the first analog computer in human history, calculating planetary movements and predicting eclipses. Dated to the 2nd century BCE, we still don't fully understand how it worked. The palace of Knossos continues to be excavated. On the floor of the Aegean Sea lie submerged cities. Linear A still awaits its own Champollion. Ancient Greece did not become a museum exhibit, it became a foundation. The word democracy, Greek. Philosophy, Greek. Theatre, mathematics, physics, biology, Greek. The Olympic Games, Greek. The principle that laws are written by people and for people, Greek. Let us return to that potter in Corinth. He finished his vase at dawn and did not know it would outlive him by millennia. He simply did his work, because beauty is worth the effort, because a question is worth its answer, because a human being is capable of creating something greater than themselves. As long as we remember this, ancient Greece lives on.